is that people make huge decisions around perceptions. We as a human, we as a species, we as a person, as a people, expect people to behave in a certain way. But of course, nobody is going to behave the way we want them to behave. They are going to behave the way they behave, no matter what it is, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, and we can bring in that judgment into it as well. So I would like to talk about perceptions. One of the things I found in my day job over the years is that people make huge decisions around perceptions. The observer is in the results. Interesting, Dialina. Okay. So I never understood what that meant. And of course, it's often spoken about in science and in physics and so on. But let's look at our daily lives. What I mean to say with this is the person looking at results is generally biased in their observing, and as a result, I'm saying that biasness flows into that my bias is in the result. So if I'm not biased, I could possibly be excluded from the results. But whatever my stance is, when I'm observing things, that's also in the results. So let us say, as an example, let us say, who wants to give me a topic and then I could work with that topic? Any topic, any of the ills that you find or something that you find interesting, and you read this survey and you read that particular survey, and these clinical trials show this and those clinical trials show that, anything. You can even go to prostitution, right? Anything that you want to talk about. What should I use as a topic? Okay, Linda?
What about road rage?
Okay, let's talk of road rage. So now let us say some psychologists, oh, and what about road rage, Linda? Should I elaborate by saying people have now done studies and said road rage is as a result of this? Or are you saying your own experience with road rage?
Well, I think both would be interesting to go into.
Okay, so let's take them one at a time and unravel it. Now, let me just explain something to the screen now, but I'm talking of this particular point. This point is where we see it for what it is. Here, before that point, it's all about perceptions. He said this, she said this, I read this here, I read that there, my frame of reference says this or that. So there's always the before. Then there is the point where you see, and some people talk of the aha moment or whatever it is, but where you make the realization and then the things that come after that. Okay, so we as a human, we as a species, we as a person, as a people, expect people to behave in a certain way. But of course, nobody is going to behave the way we want them to behave. They are going to behave the way they behave, no matter what it is, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, and we can bring in that judgment into it as well. But the principle is, now because that person cut in front of me, or because of something that that person did, suddenly, and there was a good movie about it, I forget now who was the player in that movie, but now suddenly that pushes my button, the person who's now affected by the road rage. Okay, so that is still before the moment of where we see the facts for what they are. So all of this, what I'm speaking about, is before. Now, let us say some behavioral science or anybody, the CSIR, it doesn't matter who you want to use. It could be psychologists, it could be, it doesn't matter who, it could be a clinical study, it could be, it doesn't matter. They then also go in and interview people and observe what people are saying and do research. And that research is then all before they see the facts for what they are, terminology. But just to keep it simple for now, so at the time the road rage happens, and whoever is being interviewed or whoever is conducting the interview, or I that got impacted, and Claire, let me use you as an example, but you don't get impacted. Just as an example. And Delina, you don't get impacted. And when the person doing the study looks at all of these outcomes, or the interviews, or the interviewer would typically ask questions to get certain answers. So my point is, before this point of the reality, everything that happens before is based on some personal view of a situation. Because Claire didn't get impacted. Dialina, in our discussion here, as I made examples, didn't get impacted. So it could be something as simple as this, that I'm in a hurry and somebody cuts me off. Therefore, I got impacted. But if it is that it happens continuously, of course, then it's not because I'm in a hurry or I'm late always, which means that everything that impacts me, we need to look at all those little things. But the principle of the matter is, the road rage that is invoked in me or in the study, the observer is in it. It's not absolutely 100% neutral. So, of course, it's very critical that we recognize that the observer, so if you read something, what are the latest magazines that people rave about? Give me an example of a magazine.
The You.
Okay, so let's say they have a study in there. The observer is in the study, no matter who the observer was or who the observer interviewed. Right. So that's one aspect. So let's just move that to the side now. Let's take the next one. Who would like to talk about getting distracted? Who would like to ask me about getting distracted? What has that got to do with perceptions? Or should I elaborate a little bit? If something that you're busy with is on a deadline, you are somehow going to remove the distractions. If something is not on a tight deadline, you are going to let yourself be distracted. And let me tell you what behavior I found in myself. Here we used to have advertisements of, I think it was a hippopotamus eating a chomp. And they showed the hippopotamus stretching his mouth about, pretending how big the chomp is. And that had quite a significant impact on me in the sense of, I realized, but Emmanuel, as you get the one chomp in, you're not even finished with that chomp, you already go for the next chomp, and you're not even finished with that, and you go for the next chomp. So I found that in everything that I was doing, I was stacking a deck of cards, building a sandcastle with all these chomps. And at the end of the day, or the hour or two or three, or the day or two or three, or the week, I had done very little because I kept on adding new things. And of course, that is indication of not being focused. And also there is another thing. Now I'm wearing my hat as a Scrum Master. As a Scrum Master, we also ensure that we don't context switch. So when I distract myself with this thing, and then I distract myself with that, I'm context switching. And with each two things that I'm working on together, or three things or four things, my capacity and my efficiency drops and drops and drops. So the whole idea is that we tackle one thing and not seven at the same time. Now, what has that got to do with perceptions? Okay. I could throw out a cheap shot by saying, we think by taking on all and working on seven things at the same time, we think we're progressing quicker. But in fact, it's quite the opposite. So that's the point about getting distracted. Now, who of us procrastinate? Who wants to know why we procrastinate? Show of hands. Okay. Dialina, that sounds like a big thing for you. Okay. Who wants to guess? Let's just take a guess as to why we procrastinate, which is also why we distract ourselves, by the way.
I'm going to go for it. It's when you are bored.
Okay, bored. Okay, thank you. Then you procrastinate.
I think we procrastinate because we're in denial about something.
Okay.
We don't want to deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other ideas? Oh, just say that again, Dialina. Are you saying you need pressure to procrastinate less? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pressure and deadlines, a whip, punishment, threat of punishment.
So just as a matter of interest, you would soon read that why we do that in the book that I wrote. I cover that topic exactly, almost in the words that you just said, but of course not your words, my words.
And I would say that, distractions does play a very big part in it, and also probably like doubt plays a very big part in you procrastinate, you procrastinating.
Okay, doubt. Thank you. So, any other ideas? So we are getting very close to underlying reason for procrastinate, but I'd like to just ask for further. Any thoughts? Claire, have you got a thought about what's behind procrastinate?
I think it's about also not having all the facts.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Yes, I agree with Pia. That uncertainty, that doubt. I think if you don't know what you really want to accomplish, also that also does lead to procrastination. You're all over the place with no clear goal, perhaps.
Okay, thank you. So that brings actually another quite an important thing to the table, but let me not distract myself. Okay, anybody else want to hazard a guess as to why we procrastinate?
We overwhelmed, or we don't believe in ourselves.
Thank you. So let me ask you this. I'm throwing in a hint in the form of a question. So if we knew the exact answer, would we procrastinate less? Okay,
Yes,
one person says yes. Okay, 2 people say yes. 3 are still contemplating. Okay, I've got 3 that says yes. The one is a procrastinator. Natasha, what are your thoughts?
I said no.
Okay, okay. So what you're saying is, whether I have the answer or not, I'm still going to procrastinate.
Yes.
Okay.
Because, and the reason why I'm saying this, it is very much
Please.
at which stage you are in your life at that moment, at that specific moment.
So I just want to bring in a little story of my own life for as long as I can remember. I really didn't want anybody to tell me the answers. My inquisitiveness got me to just do my own thing from very, very young. So as I look back on my life, I really was on a track from very, very early on in my life, very, very early, that I desired to find the answer for myself. There was a time before I got to where I could see what comes before this point and what comes after this point, where the one thing I wished for was wisdom to live my life. I wished for the wisdom to live my life. So there's no manual. I didn't want to listen to Peter, Paul, or Mary. I just wanted to figure it out for myself. So that brought me to a point to say, if I only had the wisdom to live my life. Okay. And of course, indirectly, that opened me up even more to figure out things for myself. Okay. So in a nutshell, as we were talking about that point, we got very close to, but not quite on it. You see, Natasha, in what you said, I would say, I am afraid to make mistakes. Therefore, I just sit and sit and sit and sit and sit, and of course procrastinate. And remember, what I'm sharing here are things I saw for myself. I don't know what the answer is. But wouldn't it be boring if everything we did, we knew the answer? Okay. So the last point that I brought on, in where I asked you to have a look at creativity and innovation, the procrastination, and because we are not going to say, I don't care if I make a mistake, I'm going to do it like this. So what if I make a mistake? So what if it's not the right answer? So what if I'm not doing it in the right way? So let me just ask, would that liberate you if you didn't worry about whether you created the right thing or the wrong thing, or you took the route that, wouldn't that liberate you?
Yes.
Although I would like to think that my first thought is it depends on whether everyone's buying into the system. Because if the rest of the people are all about getting it right or wrong, and you're the only idiot that's going, no, let's go all over the place. Let's go find our own way. The likelihood of you being taken out at the first opportunity is quite good. And that's why I feel the fear aspect is just so big. Yeah, at my
Very,
advice, yeah.
very interesting point that you made now. Very, very interesting point, especially how you worded it. Very interesting point. Let me just elaborate on it a little bit. So there's also another thing that I found in my life is I didn't, and excuse this expression, I didn't want to follow other people. I wanted to stumble. I wanted to get up. I wanted to get hurt. I wanted to touch the heater. I didn't want anybody to tell me, don't touch the heater. I wanted to experience everything firsthand for myself. If I fell down 35 times before I figured out what Emmanuel wants, so my journey is like, I don't know if you remember, but usually over December, you could go and buy a lucky dip and you get all sorts of things in it. My life has been like a lucky dip. Every time I open it, I take something out and it's different. Nothing is boring. Okay. So what I'm attempting to say here, if we are following, then where am I? But that doesn't mean I don't pay my taxes. I'm not talking of that type of following. I pay my taxes. I think I've got one or two, how shall I say, things that I can't shake off too much. The one is I tend to drive too fast. and I have gotten into a lot of trouble with one of my daughters to say, Dad is another fine. Daddy is another fine. So that's one thing I haven't been able to shake completely. I have shaken it quite a bit, but I do get the odd fine. So every time I go for my license where they check if I've got a fine, I first go to my bank to say, have I got any fines to pay them? Okay. So the fact of the matter is, it doesn't mean I'm going to steal. No, I'm not going to steal. It doesn't mean I'm going to hurt anybody else. However, I do know that if I learn these things for myself, and if I adapt as I'm going on in certain directions, I would make fewer where I take a path which is not really conducive. Or I take another path which is not really conducive. But if I continuously walk a path where all I want to do is not make mistakes, the outcome is procrastination. The outcome is very little creativity and innovation. The outcome is I truly shackle myself and incarcerate myself, where the opposite of that is liberating myself. So imagine this for a moment, that as from the next breath you take, you don't care if you make mistakes. It'll be like this, but whether it's like this or not, I don't care if I make mistakes. Okay,
So
everybody,
uh,
yes, Linda?
I think just sharing that, Emmanuel, it's for me personally a stark realization how not free I am sometimes, because your whole behavior, which then becomes your way of living, is doing things where you trapped in this place because you in the fear of, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? You know, what is this person going to think of me? I need to please them. What are people going to think of me? And yeah, it's as much as I hate to admit it, that is what goes on if I really observe some of my own behavior in my life.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Linda. And by the way, everything that everybody's sharing, I would like to also just make this point clear from the outset. Please don't follow me. Figure it out for yourself. Fall into the traps. But please take care of yourself in the meantime. Take care of yourself. Take thorough care of yourself. Don't do something that's going to impact your health, for instance. Okay, so everybody comfortable now with the procrastination and what's behind it? Right.
Yes.
Now let's look at creativity and innovation. Now it could be that your creativity and innovation, I would like to state this. If I say here again, here's this point, I saw myself as a rebel without a cause. So that wasn't really conducive. It wasn't conducive to me. I made a pest of myself everywhere I went. If I give an example, let's say the six of us go to a restaurant tonight. I was going to be the loudest person there. Never mind the people next door. Never mind the people 4 rows down from our table. Okay. And of course, then slowly but surely I realized, and this is now another thing of what we said now, am I being considerate in the sense of my behavior, that I would disturb the people next door to me who just want a quiet dinner? Just as an example. Okay? So there is a difference between being considerate and behaving in a way that I would like other people to behave as well, versus what are they going to think of me. So although I'm saying let's not behave in a way that we disturb our environment, whether it's our music that's too loud, whether it's a party that we're having till 4 o'clock in the morning and we don't care about the neighbors, etc., etc., etc. That's a whole different thing. Okay, so part of what I'm saying there is this notion of that I behave in a way towards others how I would want people to behave towards me. And that's different to saying, oh, I'm going to buck the system because I don't necessarily want to follow this. I'm going to touch the heater to see that it is really sore. And I'm just giving simplistic examples now. Okay, so let's have a look at creativity and innovation. Are you also comfortable that with all of these things that we discussed, it stifles our innovation and our creativity? The biggest driver, I think, of, I suspect, I have obviously just my own thoughts about it, but I think one of the biggest drivers of stifling our creativity and our innovation is because of the notion that we feel we need to have our primary reason for living is to make money.
Yo, that's a big one, Ammonia.
So, yeah. Yeah, and of course, through my own, how I, let's say, evolved my own understanding, I could clearly see that I wanted a way where liking what I did was more important than making money, but that didn't mean that I was not going to earn to pay the bills. So that's one aspect of it. And of course, the model of peace evolution is exactly that, Elena. So one of the things that we look at is this hypothesis in fact true? That all of us could do the things we like doing, and secondary to that, we earn. And that is quite nerve-wracking. Okay. Now, what I would like to just ask is, all these other 4 points that I spoke about, do you see how that feeds into perceptions? Okay. So if we address all these different components, our perceptions would change. And of course, if we get to this moment that I'm talking about, the perceptions from then onwards would melt away, and we would not live based on perceptions, because we've now melted those perceptions away, and then we live. I want to just use the word very, very loosely as a free spirit. However, the big thing is I'm not an island. Whether we believe it or not, we are all connected. And therefore, my free spiritness, I'm just using these terms very loosely, my free spiritness would always be considerate on myself, and I would like to add everyone and everything. Okay. So anybody have any questions about the topic that we are talking about, perceptions? You want to hear more? You want to say, no, it can't be like this, it has to be like that. Yes, Linda.
Emmanuel, I just want to come back to the observer being in the results. Could you give an example of, could we go maybe back to the road rage example? So if I was against road rage and I had to go and research that, then my research would be biased to my perception about being against it.
Yeah. Could I give you a hint to look at it?
Yeah.
Or do you want to first continue and then I give my hint?
No, good. Go for it.
Okay. So the crux of the matter is that we would not be able to look at road rage just as a principle without judging the behavior. And only once we are able to look at road rage without judging it, would we hit that point so that we could properly solve it.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay, thank you, Emmanuel.
Okay, righty. Any other questions or points or something that's where you are uncertain?
So Emmanuel, I'll go at this one. So also back to the observer is in the results. So I'm not sure if everybody has gone through KPIs in the convention jobs, key performance indicators. And I've always seen it as a very biased from your manager, because always if you're working for a company, financials are always weighting the most, almost 80%. So although in that KPIs, there are self-development, your personal development, being a team member, living the values, which is most important. But if you do not succeed in the heavy weighting in terms of the financials, you are almost like a nothing. So I'm almost trying to connect this and how I understand it. So the observer is in the result. So that person can actually create the perception that you are not worthy because you didn't perform well in the heavy weighting on the financials. Am I understanding this correct, Emmanuel? That's how I see it.
100%. So
Okay.
100%, Natasha.
Okay.
There are two things at play there at least. The one is that person wants you to do what that person wants you to do. But you might want to be a guitar player. Now, the fact that you took that conventional job means you've got to be what they want you to be. And that's not possible. It is absolutely not possible. However, Natasha, and this is a critical thing that I'm a little bit off topic now, but I think it will be fitting your question. If I am living, liking what I do, which is a guitar player, example, I'm just using a simple example. I want to be a guitar player. I want to write my own music. I want to write music pertaining to a certain style or whatever it might be. And I want to do that, but I'm unable to make a living out of it because of whatever reason. So now you go and find a job, a conventional job to pay the bills. However, because of certain reasons, we are locked into, I just want to give a small example. We are locked into a job where we've got to perform a certain way without seeing it's really only to pay the bills. But now, what if my career path to pay my bills means I've got to perform well, but I'm not able to perform well because, let's say, in my makeup, I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have this. But I've got all these things that are my bills that I need to pay. To dismantle that then, and by the way, this would be one of the courses we are also going to present, is how do we balance that? Because what we now need to do is say, oh, wait, that job actually doesn't suit me. But I need that high profile, high performance job to be able to pay the bills. So I'd have to first reduce my bills. And that might take me a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And then I could take a job that's more fitting while I learn to play guitar or write music. So so I've been very fortunate, and I don't know why the other evening I mentioned to Linde why I've always thought why. I've been very fortunate in the type of work that always interested me, that I got work in what interested me. So of course, because I also like working with people and developing the person by not constraining the person, by having as few constraints on the person as possible, that brought some level of that I achieved what the boss wanted me to achieve. But not because I was trying to please him or her. It was just how my makeup is. And I don't mean makeup that I put on my lips and on my eyes. Natasha, does that help a little bit?
Yes, definitely, Emmanuel, and thank you for that.
Okay. Right. So we've got to understand that what we find with every breath that we take moment for moment, are we spending those breaths on what we want to be spending those breaths on? And have we got perceptions that govern, oh, but I should have this, but then we need to question, why should I have that? Am I needing to maybe cut my expenses? So there are many things at play. So before this moment, there are all these things at play. And to unravel this, Emmanuel wanted to burn his fingers himself. Then after the moment, I said, oh my goodness me. Maybe 1% of people would like to see that they don't really want to play in this side, let me assist by showing what it looks like on this side. Claire, throw me with the tomato, a soft, rotten tomato. Anything else? And Natasha, if you have another one, please feel free.
Emmanuel, can I ask?
Sure, yes, Dialina.
Okay. So you said earlier that ideally, if you can change your perceptions, it sounded as if you were saying that at the root of all this lies your perceptions. And that if you could move through the distractions, the procrastination, the judgment, and you could get to your creativity and innovation by working through that, you could get rid of these perceptions and create a different life. Is it?
Dialina, I think I followed everything what you're saying. You were cut out a bit. So what you are saying is, in essence, if I address all those things, I would like to just answer you from a slightly different stance. If this is the point that I'm talking about, everything that goes here, so what I did, what Emmanuel did, is I researched this part, and I researched this part, and I researched this part, and I researched. So I researched this to see why this burnt me in the sense of touching a hot heater. I wanted to learn firsthand. Then as I saw that, I saw, wait, there's only one thing that causes all of this. It's not several things, it's only one thing that causes this. And having seen and recognized that, I realized, but how many more things do I want to research if all of it comes down to this? Now, the thing is, I've got to understand in principle the perceptions for what they are. And of course, once we get beyond that, a whole new world is visible to us. However, that jump is like this. Let's say you're standing on top of the Drakensberg somewhere on one of the flat areas, and there's a crevice going all the way down, or let's say you're on a, what do you call it? A iceberg, and there's this crack. And let's say the crack is 2 meters. And let's say it's 1.5 meters. Let's say it's 1.5 meters. And let's pretend that all of us can jump over 1.5 meters. Let's pretend. Okay, let's change it. It's only 30 centimeters. But if you jump and you don't get to the other side, you could fall all the way through till I don't know when. It's impossible to come out. Right, let's pretend we're standing there. Now, all we need to do is the courage to do this. And this big cavity, this hole, this whatever we want to call it, is there. And yes, we could fall into it, but I made it so that it's possible for us to easily jump over it. And we just need to see that for what it is and get over it. And then we start seeing things really how they are. But let me warn you. Let me warn you. your new behavior could ostracize you just by the nature of it. You could self-ostracize you because what used to be important to you, you just don't do anymore because you see it was not serving you. It was part of the perception. Okay, so let's say to melt them away one at a time versus just seeing them for what they are and taking the leap. And you move away from it. Scary, definitely.
Sure, thank you very much, Ammonia. That was amazing.